Hello guys, welcome back to another video on the Stratus Forecast Weather Channel. Sorry it's been a few days, there hasn't been much going on in the weather world, not much in the way of severe weather, snowstorms, or really anything. So today we're going to be going over, and we're going to be primarily focusing on the Northeast in this video, and there's a specific reason why. We're going to have a low pressure system that's developing already in the Southeast. It's then going to ride up the eastern seaboard, and it's going to drive well inland, and when it does so, and as it does so, it's going to strengthen very quickly, and it's going to be able to bring in a lot of warm air from the south and just drive that warm air up into New England, where temperatures could soar from anywhere from 50s to near 60 degrees. There's also going to be the potential for strong to potentially damaging wind gusts, heavy rainfall. Areas are going to be seeing a lot of rainfall. We'll talk about those totals in just a few minutes. We're also going to be seeing the potential for some severe weather. And it's pretty rare for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast to see severe weather in the Northeast in December, but it's going to be a potential for this storm. Currently, right now, we're going to be taking a look at the watches and warnings. We're then going to get into the we're going to cover the future radar. We're going to cover the temperatures, and we're going to cover a bunch of other things that are related to severe weather to see if we have anything really able to withhold and stand that severe weather threat. We're also going to be taking a look at those temperatures, the dew points, everything like that, along with the rainfall amounts and the snowfall amounts from the snowstorm that's going to be potential overnight into tomorrow morning for the Northeast. Most of Maine will be dealing with this system. It's going to be a relatively weak system. It's only going to be able to drop a few inches, but we're really going to be also focusing on that freezing rain threat, along with that icing and a little bit of sleet mixed in there as well. So yeah, let's get right into it. So right now we're just gonna, like I said, we're focusing on the Northeast in this video because there's really nothing else going on in the other part of the country. It's pretty much nothing. There's some flooding issues going on down in the Southeast. Pretty much no severe weather is going on now. So right now we're just dealing with some very basic weather threats in the Northeast right now. Right now we have a winter storm watch for parts of far western New York and far northwestern New York. We also have a winter weather advisory that is in effect for much of parts of northern New York and into eastern Vermont and and much of New Hampshire, and it also extends all the way up into pretty much the entire state of Maine. And then these oranges you're seeing, these are actually high wind watches, and there's actually a high wind warning already in parts. I think this is either a high wind watch or a high wind warning. Either one. There's high wind watch or warning for the down east portion of Maine, and there's also a high wind watch and either one of them for parts of coastal southern, southeastern, northeast. So that really explains what we're going to be dealing with the next couple of days. So let's get right into this. So here's the future radar right now. So as we're dealing with right now, like I said, we're going to be focusing on primarily the Northeast. So we're going to go right to the Northeast. So right now, this is the GFS model. We're just going to be comparing the GFS and the European model together. That's pretty much it for this video. So here we go. We got some snow happening, parts of northern Northeast and parts of New England. We're also dealing with some rain in southern New England. But this is going to move through, and it's just going to fall apart because there's just not enough moisture to support this system. It's all pretty much dry air, so it's just going to fall apart. So basically a little bit of a slippery commute tomorrow morning. We're just going to be dealing with a few inches of snow and maybe some freezing rain. It's not the biggest event in the whole world. Then you're going to notice down here, this system right here. This is what we're watching for right here. It's going to then drive up, and then here comes that low pressure system that we were watching. That's going to be the first batch that comes through, and there might be some icing problems in parts of Maine, and some of these heavier amounts probably could see some pretty significant icing out of this event. So first that low pressure system comes through. Then we're dealing with the secondary. This one is going to be the one that strengthens. There's also going to be some snow on the backside, but there's not going to be really a whole lot. We're probably talking from a few inches to maybe several inches, maybe some spots closer to a foot, but I'm not expecting much because there's just not enough cold air to support this. Even though there's going to be a lot of cold air wrapping around the backside, it's just not going to come in fast enough, in my opinion. So here we go, and then this thing really strengthens, and this squall line is what we're watching for here. This is what you call a squall line and some snow on the backside. So it's between Heavy rain and strong winds. You see how tight these pressure gradients are together, with a low pressure of 993. That's the pressure right now, or as of now for this forecast, and it's going to be able to increase, and it's going to drop to in the 980s, and then it'll strengthen more from there. But this is why we're having that severe weather threat, because of this squall line that we're watching. So then as we go on, as you can see, that squall line, it drags up into Maine and then it crosses, and then it continues on. And I would even say parts of eastern Maine could be seeing a severe weather threat out of this system just because of this squall line that extends all the way up into eastern Maine. And then there's some snow on that backside. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of snow. Maybe some snow in northern Maine, as you can see there on the backside, but not a whole lot. Maybe a few inches, or a few tenths of an inch to maybe a few inches. Then that moves on, and then that's pretty much the entire thing, and the lake effect snowmaker turns on. Now we're going to take a look at the European model. So here's the European model. There's a bunch of precipitation going on that ranges from snow, sleet, freezing rain, and just plain rain for the northeast, and then that moves through. The European model has a little bit more strength and on with the snow and doesn't really fall apart until later on, but just some snow showers. That system comes through, and then here comes the second system. Then this has it a little bit weaker, the European model, which is typical for the European, but here's that squall line that we're watching for. And this looks like a very intense squall line with some snow on the backside and some freezing rain and mixed precipitation in between. But this is a very intense squall line. So here it goes, it pushes through, and that squall line actually stays together through the entire process. So severe weather threat has it in place for much of this area, and I think they're going to extend it into parts of down East Maine. I think it's primarily going to be for those winds. And the only reason there would be a severe weather threat is if there's lightning in this, right? And those wind gusts that come along with it. But I think it's going to be a very gusty squall line that will be able to knock out power for lots of people. So if we continue on, as you can see, that squall line moves through. I think the highest wind gusts are going to be out of that squall line. So that goes through, and then this lake effect snow machine turns on, and they're going to see multiple inches, which they've already seen several feet, even close to 60 inches in some spots. They don't need more of it, but of course they're going to get more of it. Alright, next we're going to move on to those temperatures, because those temperatures are really going to soar. And then we'll move on to the severe weather threat. So those temperatures are quite cold, and that's why it's going to be able to support that snow, but then these temperatures really rise out of the south, and then boy do those temperatures rise real fast. But as you can see, it's a very quick moving system, because as you can see already, these cold temperatures are already moving in from the west very quickly behind this front. And those temperatures already get down in the teens and single digits, and probably even some below zero temperatures in parts of Canada, near those Great Lakes region. Those temperatures are really going to soar across. This is why I think they're putting up a severe weather threat, because these temperatures in the 60s, but these temperatures still will be able to support that severe weather threat even into Maine. As you can see, these temperatures really soar ahead of that front into the 50s, and then boom, it just crashes just like that. And it's going to be a cold Friday night. And then that lake effect, plenty cold enough for snow. Alright, now we're going to take a look at that severe weather. We're actually going to take a look at the winds right now. Alright, here's the winds. So those winds are going to be calm, but here it comes. Here's those winds. Right in down East Maine and through eastern Maine, but if we take a look at the GFS model, it's going to show a little bit of a different situation. The GFS model really tends to crank up these systems. As you can see, this doesn't look realistic, but if the European model goes with it, then we'll definitely agree with both models. But you're seeing basically between anywhere from just 10 miles per hour all the way up to maybe even close to 30 to 35 miles per hour, maybe even close to 40 miles per hour right along the coastline of Maine. And this is also going to be parts of Massachusetts and southern New England as well. But you can see this is why we're dealing with these gusty winds, because this is what happens when you have a strong cold front come through. So those are those winds, and then we'll take a look at the European model. The European model is going to be a little bit more gentle with this, as they typically are, but for some reason they're more extreme with snowstorms, which I don't understand why. It has a similar situation. Basically, those winds are going to be gusty in southern New England, southern Northeast, Massachusetts, any of these states, even into far eastern New York, and then really Maine is going to be hit hard by this windstorm. It's going to be really hit hard, and you're going to see why in a second. We're going to pull out those wind gusts. The the wind gusts are going to just be very high out of the system. So then I think since it's a cold front, since it's a very strong cold front, it's going to drag in those winds from the east or the west, and it's going to be able to drive those winds, and that's exactly what you see here. Those winds come through, and those back winds comes through, and with these winds going west, it's going to be able to drag these snow squalls in the lake effect snow machine. Look at these winds in these lakes; they're very high. So yeah, there's that. And now I'm going to take a look at the wind gusts. Alright, so here we are. It's very calm right now, but it's going to get real crazy Wednesday night to Thursday. We're going to zoom right into Wednesday. Here comes those winds right out of the south, and they're going to actually shift to the south-southeast as we go into Wednesday night to Thursday. So these winds are going to be pretty much in the 30s and maybe some 40s right along the immediate coast, 30 to 40 miles per hour, and then you're going to see, look at these winds just rise out of the south. 54, some of these locations could even be edging 70 miles per hour. That's just crazy to think about. Generally gusty winds, maybe some isolated power outages first starting Wednesday night, but it's not going to be a whole lot until we really get overnight Wednesday when that squall line comes through, and it's going to be really able to produce those damaging wind gusts, literally just widespread. So 40s and 50s for the most part, and then you're going to notice that squall line comes through right around 10 p.m., and then look at this. These winds just shift out of the south and southeast, and these winds just rise. 66 in Portland, 57 in Bangor, 56 in Patton. So like I said, these wind gusts are going to be just widespread. And then that squall line comes through mid-state, and then look at that. There goes the winds. A wind gust between 50 and 70 miles per hour statewide is just crazy. So this is going to be able to knock out power, especially when you have the winds on top, those snow covered trees, the wet snow, the rain. It's going to be able to cause flooding, and we'll take a look at those rainfall amounts just in a minute, but they're going to be pretty high. Those winds are going to be able to knock out that power because these trees are just going to get uprooted. They just will not stand a chance versus these severe wind gusts. And I would not be shocked right along the parts of very far southern New England and northeast, and right along the coastline of Maine, and maybe even as far inland as maybe Bangor. I think there's a chance we could either hit close to 70 mile per hour wind gusts or over it. I think there's a chance, obviously right offshore, but I think there's a chance right along the immediate coastline to maybe a few miles inland, there's a chance that we could hit hurricane force wind gusts. And what that means is basically wind gusts 70 miles per hour and higher. Those are your hurricane force wind gusts. I think there's a chance of it. Now, as of right now, they only have us at a high wind watch and a storm watch along the shoreline of 65 miles per hour. But I think with this cold front so strong, it's going to be able to produce those very high wind gusts. And along that squall line, it's going to make it even more reasonable to support those stronger wind gusts. Because if we're talking about a severe weather threat here, along with the severe weather threat, right? Those higher wind gusts. Usually what we see out of severe weather scenarios, slight risk, enhanced risk, moderate risk. Obviously it's not going to be anywhere as close to that. We're talking about probably a marginal risk here. It's going to be able to drive those wind gusts even higher. Because typically what we see with those severe thunderstorms that even get close to producing tornadoes is we see those damaging wind gusts exceeding 60, 70 miles per hour, and even in derecho situations, which this looks like a derecho situation from my standpoint, because you get that squall line, and that squall line just pushes east, and it stays together the entire time. And you're basically talking a derecho. I believe the definition, I know that what the definition is, I just don't know if it's 100 miles, if it stays together for a solid 100 miles of just spreading straight line wind gusts of 68 miles per hour or higher, or it's 200 miles. I'm not sure, but either way, I think it's going to be more than possible. With these wind gusts to be so high, it's basically a derecho event, in my opinion. It's basically a derecho threat. And with those winds, severe thunderstorms, you see those winds gusting between 60 and 70 miles per hour. And in some cases, they gust even higher. And that's when it gets to a potential where you're talking about a tornado threat. This situation, not going to be a tornado threat, because number one, those dew points aren't even close enough to even support a derecho. If anything, it's probably going to be enough to support those damaging wind gusts and those hail threat. But like I said, I think a hail threat is definitely possible, along with those strong wind gusts. Potentially even, they're definitely going to be damaging wind gusts. There's no doubt about it. Widespread wind gusts like this is a recipe for disaster. And here's why. You get that packed snowpack in the mountains. You get that packed snowpack even as far down to the coastline. Even where they're still seeing that snowfall even down to the coastline. It's wet, heavy snow on those trees, on the leaves. You got these strong southerly, southeasterly winds, because what's happening is you get those winds coming out of your mouth and off the shoreline. As soon as this low pressure system continues to move off to the northeast as it's doing, it's going to be able to shift those winds to the northeast, and you're going to see that in a minute as I continue through this. It's going to shift those winds south-southeast, and that's a recipe for disaster, because Maine does not handle southeasterly winds very well. It's the correct wind field and wind direction for those widespread to numerous power outages. And we've seen a situation like this before. We've seen that 2-hour event, that 2-hour tight window where that squall line comes through, and those high wind gusts just surge through embedded in that line of showers and heavier downpours. I'm not mentioning the word thunderstorms because as of right now, I'm not seeing a thunderstorm threat. But you cannot rule out some thunder and lightning in the line because of that rain is so heavy. Now, once you put in the chance for marginal risk of severe weather, now we're talking about thunderstorms. I'm just not seeing that yet. And this is day 3 for that severe weather threat. It's only for southern New England. And even on the models, it's not showing. Even this windy.com, usually when you have those thunderstorms and those showers and thunderstorms, you'll see those lightning logos in that radar. But I'm not seeing that out of the system. But like I said, there's still that potential for severe weather. I think the major threat, obviously, tornadoes is completely off the table. Even though you can see tornadoes in an embedded line like this, there has to be wind shear, which there is wind shear in this case, but those dew points are just barely touching that range of that severe weather criteria. You're only dealing with those dew points in the 50s and 50 to 55 degrees, and we'll show you that in a minute. But the 50 to 55 degrees is just barely enough for severe weather, which I'm sure there's been multiple other cases where you see this severe weather threat with those dew points even in the 40s. It's definitely possible, but it's between dry air and humid air. It's right on that edge point of dry air and humid air. Okay, dry air is 40 degrees or lower, in my opinion, and that humid, we're not even close to that tropical standpoint. We're not even close to that tropical air mass. Not even close. That's why we're in the middle of winter. Obviously, there's subtropical systems, but in this case, this is not a subtropical system. It's not even tropical. We're not even in the tropical area at all. We're just dealing with those strong, nasty wind gusts and that heavy rainfall. But like I said, if anything, I wouldn't even put a marginal risk up yet, but because I'm not even seeing equivalents to anywhere as close to a severe weather threat here, because it's driven by mainly winds. Of course, as we take a look, there's going to be enough wind shear to support it. But the dew points are what's just saying this isn't going to be a severe weather threat. But I can see it in far southeastern New England. I can see it in Boston, Massachusetts. I can see it in Connecticut. I can see it in New Jersey. I can see it in far southeastern New York. I can see it in those areas because those dew points are going to be able to support it. Just barely. We're talking like dew points between 50 and 60 degrees. It's not like this huge problem as we're talking about. But enough of me rambling. There's definitely going to be that power outage threat. There's definitely going to be those damaging wind gusts. There's also going to be that potential for severe weather. If I'm going to put out anything right now, it's mostly going to be for those damaging wind gusts. And because those temperatures are so low into the 40s, or not so low, but mid 40s, 50s, closer to 60 degrees, even maybe closer to 70 degrees in far southern New England, because it's going to be right in that area where those temperatures are going to be able to reach that standpoint. We're basically just talking about a straight line wind gust event and maybe some hail because those temperatures are so low, and you can have hail because obviously those upper higher latitudes in that atmosphere are going to be able to produce that hail because the temperatures are far colder up above the clouds or in those areas, in those layers of the atmosphere, then obviously it is close to the ground. So obviously the hail will be able to stick together because these temperatures are in the 50s and 60s. Like in the summertime, what we would see. if we get a thunderstorm that's under 50 to 60 degrees, or originally already 50 to 60 degrees, and that thunderstorms come through, those temperatures are enough to support hail, and that hail likely will stay together. But obviously, if we're talking about like 80 to 90 degrees, that hail's not even going to be able to stand a chance against those warm temperatures. So you're just going to see that hail fall out of the sky, and then it might hit the ground, but it's also going to very quickly dissipate and just fall apart, because that hail is reaching temperatures in the 80s and 90s. But obviously this situation is different. Typically, I don't think we're going to see hail out of the situation in parts of Maine, but I think there's definitely a potential in southern Maine. Or not southern Maine, but southern New England. You get the point. Let's continue on. Enough of me rambling. So then as we go on through 1 a.m., 2 a.m., even 3 a.m., this is that squall line coming through right here. These temperatures from the back side of it, the western side. This is where these winds are really going to ramp up out of the west and just drive that cold air in. So basically it's pretty funny to see. It's pretty hilarious because you'll see why. So eastern Maine is dealing with warm temperatures and strong wind gusts, while western Maine is seeing colder temperatures and lighter wind gusts. It's like a split state scenario here. We're dealing with one side of it dealing with high wind gusts and temperatures in the 40s, 50s, and the other side dealing with temperatures in the 20s, 30s, and 40s with light wind gusts. And snow. That's just the main point of it. That's what's so funny about this. It's a split state forecast. And then as we continue on, that cold front continues through, and it might even still be gusting through 5 a.m. Even areas of Erdmanston, Patton, Bangor, and the down east coastline. Wind gusts between 40 and 50 miles per hour. Still able to knock out those power, but obviously well before, even like 30 minutes before this event, we're probably going to be seeing between maybe as much as 500 power outages, people without power ranging, and then very fastly going up between 1,000, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 power outages, and maybe I think might be pushing it, but I wouldn't even be surprised if we hit 30,000 power outages with a statewide event like this, with the main population so high. Well, not so high, but there's a lot of people, so that equals a lot of power outages, right? And with these high wind gusts, 65 miles per hour is pretty intense for this time of year. Especially, you see those type of wind events in the Rockies, not in Northeast typically, right? So, unless if we get those nor'easters or those high wind events like we're going to be seeing out of this system. But like I said, I don't think we're going to see quite as much as 50,000 power outages. I think that's probably a little bit extreme for this type of event, but I'm definitely probably between 10 and 40,000 power outages is pretty reasonable. That's what I think anyways. Then these winds are really going to pick up out of the west. You're going to see that in the mountain in a minute. 3 p.m. and these wind gusts, and then they eventually calm down because the high pressure gets involved. But actually, with this low pressure system and this high pressure system together, what does that equal? Well, the tighter those two are together, the stronger the winds are, and that's why we're going to be seeing those gusty winds continuing through Friday, and they could gust as high as 30 miles per hour maybe. And that high pressure, and then obviously that high pressure is not the strongest one in my opinion. That's why it's probably going to be relatively weak wind gusts relative to what we'll be seeing. But then we continue on, and then it gets quieter. And then I'm pretty sure there'll still be some lake effect snow, but that lake effect snow event is probably going to deteriorate because these winds are now coming out of the east. So you get the standpoint. GFS model, we're going to see the GFS model just be where it's going to be able to kick up these wind gusts and make it seem way more extreme than it actually is, and you're going to be able to see that very easily. So, Wednesday, you see this doesn't even look realistic to me. The winds are way too high, especially for a wind gradient for a pressure gradient this tight, or this loose in my opinion. And they're going to see, this is just unrealistic. 70 miles per hour in Portland, this is just unrealistic. And then dragging those 70 mile per hour wind gusts all the way up into Bangor. This is just unrealistic, especially you're going to have way tighter pressure gradients to have that type of wind scenario. But I think the European model does a better job at this. I think 65 miles per hour is more reasonable. I think 71 miles per hour is a little bit pushing it, and even close to 75 to 80 miles per hour offshore is probably pushing it a little bit. But yeah, you get the main point. So, severe weather threat with this thing, the marginal risk could get extended into far eastern Maine, maybe down east Maine, where the squall line comes through, and as long as that squall line stays together. Then we're going to take a look at the temperatures Actually, I think we already took a look at those temperatures. Those temperatures are going to be in the 50s and 60s. We'll take a quick look at it right now, but as you can see, 50s and 60s mostly. Now we're going to be able to take a look at that dew point, because the dew point, it's not enough to support severe weather, in my opinion. So, there it goes. Again, like I said, I don't even know why they have a severe weather threat in parts of far southern New England, because the dew points are only in the 50s. Again, it's in that criteria for severe weather, obviously. But in Maine, there's a chance of it, but it's not great. And then those dew points continue, and like I said, those 40s behind the cold front, and then it just dries out completely. So, and you're going to see that with the GFS model as well. I don't even need to show it, but I'll show it anyways. It usually takes these dew points a little bit higher than typical, right? Maybe a little bit lower, but it does the job there. So severe threat is definitely there, but it's not great. Then we can take a look at the temperature. So, or the, no, my bad, let me see here. I'll just take a look at the severe weather threat. So, we want to take a look at that we want to take a look at that energy available, right? So we'll take a look at the European model and the GFS model. So, it doesn't show that, so we'll just look at the GFS model. I don't know why it does this for me. The GFS model only has it, which makes no sense to me, but this is the energy available anyways. So there's basically nothing out of this, so I don't even know why there's a severe weather threat, but there is for some reason. But obviously, most unstable, we'll take a look at this as well. Again, it's so weak, it's not even worth putting a marginal risk up, really. And then supercell composite, like I said, there's nothing there. Maybe a little bit, but it's not there. This is why this is going to be a straight line wind event, mostly. So yeah, there's that. So now we'll take a look at those rainfall amounts, obviously, and then the snowfall amounts directly after that. So, total snowfall amounts for the European model, we'll go through Friday, I guess. Very light snowfall amounts. Like I said, most of those snowfall amounts are going to be happening in northern New York, those Great Lakes regions, where most of the snowfall is going to be between like 5 and 12 inches. We're going to be, obviously the snowfall totals are going to ramp up real quickly as that lake effect snowstorm turns on. But it very quickly deteriorates as you go far in northeastern Maine, but western Maine and even to down east Maine, you're dealing with a solid 1 to maybe close to 4 inches of snow. So it's not the biggest event ever, but it's there. And then we'll just continue on, and then that lake effect snowstorm really turns on. So there's that. And we'll take a look at the snowfall amount from the GFS model. The GFS model is probably going to take this way out of hand and make it seem way more than it actually is, and it typically does that. You'll see that. Just watch. Actually, it does a pretty decent job, actually. It's not the worst scenario, I guess, I should say. But through Saturday, again, mountains, I don't know why it's doing this, because that's not even realistic at all, 6 inches. That's not even realistic because the snowfall is not even high up there. It's more off to the west, really. So 1 to 4 inches of snow is definitely realistic here. I think it does a good job with that, but pretty much full northeast, especially well inland, we're dealing with a widespread 4 to 12 inches. And let's see, yeah, see, it overdoes it, 15 inches of snow. But that's that. And then we'll see another snowstorm come through later on that might provide us with some sort of white Christmas, but there's that. We'll take a look at the rainfall amounts as well. Also, there's going to be some icing. I want to cover that real quick. Does it really only do it? Okay, we'll do it from the GFS model, even though the GFS model is pretty much inaccurate, but we'll do it anyways. It's pretty much inaccurate. This is what we're dealing with for icing. Not the biggest event in the whole world, okay? Not the biggest event by any means. Maybe mountains of Maine between 1/10 of an inch, maybe close to 2/10 of an inch, maybe higher in some local locations, maybe closer to 3/10 of an inch, where you're going to probably more of an issue with icing, but this is not by any means a big event at all. Now we'll take a look at that rainfall amount. Rainfall amounts will be the GFS and the European model. So like I said, big event for rainfall amounts, much needed rainfall, a widespread 1 to 3 inches of rain, very much needed for the moderate drought that currently Maine is experiencing. We'll also do it for the European model here. We'll go through Saturday, a widespread 1 to 3 inches along with that. So the models are now agreeing, because the GFS model had us at like 3 to 4 inches of rain, so we're definitely agreeing with this now. So that's really that. So a decent amount of rain coming out of the system will definitely help with that drought. But like I said, with all these events, with all these windstorms in December, the rain amounts really stick in the mountains, honestly. That's where we see the most rain out of this, and that's why it's going to be such of an issue, because with those temperatures rising in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, that it's going to be able to rapidly melt that snowfall amount with that torrential rainfall coming down, and that's why we're going to be seeing such potential for flooding. I expect a widespread flood watch for the entire state of Maine and much of northeast and New England as well, as we're going to be dealing with those high rainfall amounts. And those wind gusts, pretty high there. We'll be able to support any of those trees with those snowfall amount on it. I'm thinking before those winds come through, that snowfall amount will be pretty much entirely gone, because the rain is going to be so excessively high. So the wind threat will still be an issue, but it will be a little bit diminished, since that snow is probably going to be entirely gone, let's be honest. But not for the mountains, obviously, because the mountains are packed with feet of snow right now. But obviously down East Maine, Eastern Maine, and parts of Southern Maine are definitely going to be able to, there's still going to be a pretty significant power outage threat, but it's going to be a little bit lower since you get that snow off the trees first. But obviously, that doesn't even matter at this point, because with that rain coming through, it's going to be able to, that ground's going to be so saturated, even oversaturated, that those trees are going to be able to wiggle so easily, and it's going to make for, again, a recipe for disaster. And it's going to be able to uproot trees. Power outages will probably be statewide, in my opinion, because it's just a perfect scenario for widespread power outages, honestly. But yeah, that's really immense. So we'll end out the video right here. So again, what to watch out for: that icing tomorrow morning, some snow in between. School situation for like delays and stuff. I think there'll definitely be a delay. I think there's also a chance for closings. It's not the greatest chance for closings, but it's there. And then obviously the damaging wind gusts, the high wind, the same thing really. High wind gusts, damaging wind gusts, that's pretty much the same exact thing. Heavy rainfall amounts, probably some pretty extensive flooding out of the system. I'm pretty sure. We can take a look at the excessive rainfall map right now, actually. So, yeah. A slight risk pretty much statewide for Maine and parts of New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Boston, Massachusetts, pretty much under a slight risk of excessive rainfall. So, obviously, that too. So, yeah, that's pretty much the entire video. So, stay prepared for the system. It's going to be able to bring damaging wind gusts, heavy rainfall amounts, some decent snowfall amounts, and power outages and flooding. So that's really all. So yeah, hopefully you did enjoy this video. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to never miss an upload. And without further ado, like always, stay safe out there, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.